Hey guys, my guest tonight is Karin Wilkinson, and we're going to be talking about the possibility of there being a sinister alien breeding program. See you in a minute. Grab your popcorn and snacks, find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust, turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great Thursday. I did. I went out to lunch with my good friend. Had pizza today. I usually don't eat pizza, but I had pizza today and a big salad. But it tasted really good. I don't get out that much anyway. I'm always here with my kid back here. You can see we're getting close to the holiday season. He's been like this since the end of October, so these kids. Anyway, my name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state, which means, I think, hey, I did it right the first time. Look at that. See, I'm getting better. Which means that we can help you. But the only issue is California is like this really, really huge state, and people don't realize it. A lot of people think of California, they think of it like Hawaii with surfers. We got that. That's covered. There's no problem there. But there are parts of this coast that are way up north near Oregon where it gets cold. And then you've got all of Southern California. Anyway, my point being is that this is what we have. We have ocean, with beaches. We've got mountains. We've got the Sierra Nevada mountain region. Okay, some of these mountains, like Mount Shasta, the Cascades, are in California as well. And you've got Mount Whitney down south. And then you've got the farm areas. There's a lot of farm area. There's a lot of rural area. There's a lot of high desert. There's a lot of low desert. So California is huge, really huge. So in that case, if you do call and we can't get to you right away, it might take us 2 or 3 days, we do have mediums on staff who can phone you and talk to you about what may or may not be going on in your house or your business. And most times they can settle it down until we get out there. All right, that being said, really quick, sorry I got this turned up. I'm going to turn it down. I'm blasting you guys out. I apologize. The thing was showing red. I apologize if I blew out your eardrums. Anyway, if you're watching from Facebook today, please be sure to hit that follow button if you haven't done so already. Show us some love today. Give me some thumbs up, some happy faces, some smileys. And be sure to comment in the chat room, because what that does is it puts us up higher in the FYP, which means Facebook sees that in its master computer, and it puts us out to more people. Because that's the key, right? We're trying to get out to more people with the show. And if there is somebody in the house with you or someplace like that, and you want to share us, feel free to share us. I have people who are just having dinner right now and things like that, listeners. I also have people who are doing their laundry and cleaning their house. One of our listeners likes to carry us in her pocket while she does her laundry. Hey, I'm good for it. Especially at the laundromat, right? Put this on everybody. Same thing with YouTube. We've got 800 and some odd videos over there. If you haven't done so already, feel free to subscribe, because, like I said, we've got all kinds of topics. We don't only do paranormal here. We do news items. We'll talk about murders. We'll talk about mysteries and all that kind of stuff, because I like to do that. Okay, I talk about spousal abuse. I like to do that. I'm a journalist, photojournalist, and that's just part of me. So yeah, same thing over YouTube. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. And I have everything in categories, so you have a chance to look for this stuff. If you like medium Nancy Matz, you can go ahead and find her file and click on that. If you're into this stuff like tonight, alien abduction, UFOs, I have a file for that. And so you can go in there and check out, all the guests we've had that have talked about that. So I thought I'd make it easier for you and me. Okay, and again, share us, give us some likes, give us some loves, show us some love, comment, keep us up in the FYP. If you've just joined us over here from TikTok, welcome. We do this every night, 6 days a week. All right, now that that's all said, my guest tonight, I'm really excited to have her on. We've had a lot of alien contactees on the show, but I think she has a more interesting story, because I think, you want to get all sides of what people think, because you've got the group of people think that the aliens are here to help us and it's all hunky-dory, and then you've got the other half that wasn't too thrilled by meeting them. And I think, I think you got to have that balance to decide for yourselves, what's going on. So let me bring her in. Her name is Karin Wilkinson, and we'll get the show on the road. Hello.
Hi, Charlotte. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect. I hope I
Great.
didn't blast anybody's eardrums during the beginning. I looked down and my little mic monitor was red, and I was like,
It scared me. I thought it was my machine. I'm like, oh no, what have I done to my mic?
See? That's right. So the first part of the show, if anybody was sleeping, they're not now.
No, I was wide awake. Yep.
So tell me about you.
Oh, it's so nice to be here tonight, Charlotte.
Thank you
so much for having me. I'm just your average, everyday mom, grandma. I'm a writer, and I have written my story called Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. You can probably see it behind me or here.
I can do better than that. Watch. I can do better than that.
Oh,
ready? I got your back. There you go.
You got me. Thank you so much. So I met L.A. Marzulli a couple of years ago and shared my story with him. And it's kind of a interesting account of how I got to that point. And he ended up putting that interview into his fourth movie in his UFO series on the abduction phenomenon. And from there, that led me to realizing I really wanted to write this so that I could share this, because so many people started talking to me after that and thanking me for sharing the story. People with similar or the same types of experiences.
Right.
So many people have had this happen, and they're like, I'm afraid to talk about it, and then all of a sudden you talked about it, and I feel like maybe it's okay. Maybe we can talk about it. So I've talked to so many people just because people want to talk, and they're afraid. Anyway, you can't, who do you talk to? People think you're crazy, but this has happened to so many people. I mean, as you know, in your field of work, so many people have these unusual experiences. So
yes, yeah. Well, the thing is, with the experience and reading about your experience, for the first time last year is when I found out about experiences like yours, because you don't hear it all the time. And I was watching a special, on abductions and stuff, and it's the first time that, like I said, I ever heard about that happening to the fetus, the child. Well, 1 minute it's there, the next. Well, I'm not saying 1 minute, but you know what I mean. 1 month it's there, the next month it's gone.
Right. So
it's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's a really it's a shocking and terrible thing that happens to women, and I've had the opportunity to talk to so many women who have gone through this, and we've been able to share together and help each other with that. When you go through something like that, I mean, you're thrilled. I was married, I got pregnant, I was so happy, I was so excited, and then I just didn't feel very good one night. Woke up in the middle of the night, but I hadn't had a miscarriage. I was in my 3rd month of pregnancy. I'd been to the doctor. Everything was confirmed. Everything was fine. And this is the first time I realized it happened. And I went into the hospital, and they're like, there was no heartbeat. They did an ultrasound, didn't see a baby, did a D&C, and said there was no fetal tissue. And they're like, are you sure you were pregnant? I'm like, I was very much pregnant, and I had all the confirmations along the way, and this kept happening. And it was just devastating because I didn't get to mourn those babies. That's a huge loss. And it's just terrifying. And I didn't think I would ever really be able to talk about it. But after I had a near-death experience, or I like to call it a near-life experience, I went through PTSD therapy for that, and it helped me to be able to finally deal with the emotions and the trauma of all this and all the abductions that had happened, because my abductions started from as early as I can remember.
And did you know you were being abducted, or is this the thing where you would wake up and not feel good the next morning or something? Because a lot of people don't realize it. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize they've been abducted.
Right. No, I knew when I was little, from my earliest memories are of them coming to get me. For some reason, they weren't able to wipe my memories the way they were with other people. I didn't
Mhm.
remember every time, but I remembered a lot more than I think they wanted me to. They being the entities that were coming to get me.
Right.
Having those vivid memories of being taken, them showing up in the room. If you want, I can describe the typical
Absolutely. Yeah,
scenario.
let's do this. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. When I was little, and it's getting easier to recount it. The first couple of times I recounted it, I think I had to walk away and cry a few times because it was just so, yeah, it's just traumatic. But when I was little, the typical scenario would be I would wake up and I would just feel something changing in the room, like
Mhm.
it's just feel something evil or something different in the room. And sometimes there'd be some kind of a low buzzing or humming noise around with it. Sometimes there'd be a very visible light outside the window. Sometimes it would get really quiet, like when we were in the country, all the cicadas and crickets and everything would just stop.
Mhm.
And in the country, it's not quiet. That's just that never happens.
Mhm.
Um, and they would just be at the foot of my bed. I would suddenly see, or sometimes beside my bed, different places in the room. A couple of usually 2 or 4 at a time, the typical gray alien that most people report seeing, the big
Mhm.
bulbous head, the big black vacuous kind of eyes that just look like a screen. And from that point, I would go into some sort of a sleep paralysis where
Mhm.
you just can't move. You can't shout. You can see everything going on, but you can't do anything about it. Um, and they would levitate me off the bed, and I would go out a closed window or up through the ceiling. And as a kid, I remember seeing details up at the top of the ceiling, the wallpaper, the lights, things like that, or the going through the window, just the dust on a windowsill or cobwebs, weird things that you don't see normally. And it was the weirdest feeling because it would feel like this intense vibration, almost like my body was just 1,000 million pieces or ball bearings. It's just, I've tried to explain it. It's just so hard to describe. And I'd be going out a window or up through a ceiling. And I know it sounds crazy, but it happened, and it happened over and over again. And sometimes it would be into a light, and then
Mhm.
you see anything when you're in that light. So you don't know how fast you're going or where you're going or how far you're going. But that was how the typical scenario would start. And sometimes I'd wake up in transit, like
Mhm.
often I'd get into this elevator that would just go down, and I hated it. It was cold, it was dark, it was just everything about it was scary. Sometimes I'd wake up on a table, and then they
Mhm.
would be doing examinations on me, big x-ray type things. I don't know what they were. That's the closest thing I can compare it to, or
Mhm.
things like that. It was just terrifying as a little kid. I mean, sometimes I would come home and my pajamas would be inside out, or they would just be off on the floor, or I'd be in another room in the house. Just crazy, crazy things. I have marks on my body. I have a burn scar still that I put that picture in my book to show people. There were physical remains of what had happened to me, to this day, that still remain. And it was traumatic, to take a little child who doesn't want to be taken over and over again. It was really, really a scary experience.
I've heard stories from other people who haven't had quite the experience you have as children. They
Mhm.
described like playrooms, where kids
Mhm.
were coloring. I mean, did you see
Oh,
anything like
yeah.
that at all? Okay.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, there were other kids. And there was this big table, and there would be like crayons and
Okay.
paper. There were weird blocks that were not the normal shapes that we got at school.
Mhm.
And I think they were watching us play. Some of the kids were really messed up, like banging their heads with their hands, and some kids were just crying. Some kids were like catatonic looking almost,
Mhm.
I think it just depended on how they were reacting, or maybe some of them were just kind of messed up from it. I don't know if some of them might have been there, like in residence maybe, or, all of us were taken the same way I was. I don't know, because we didn't have any conversations, obviously, as kids about that. So, but so some of the times, yeah, it was with other kids. A lot of times when I was really little, there were these what they call Nordic looking aliens.
Mm-hmm.
These entities were very tall, thin, fair skinned, fair haired, fair eyed. Their hair was almost like a translucent, like whatever color they were around, their hair kind of picked up that color. It was really weird.
Right.
And when I was little, I was terrified of my dad's family because they looked like that similar kind of look. And as a little
Mm-hmm.
kid, you just don't make those specific distinctions between that's really not them.
Right.
My
Right.
family was not aliens; they were normal people. But I was scared of them, and then my family couldn't understand why. Well, we didn't have vocabulary for it back then, especially as little kids. How do you say what they are when you don't know what they are?
Right.
And then
Did
kind
your
of thought,
parents? Well, did your parents? If you had marks on your body, did your parents ever ask you what they were, or try to figure out what they were?
no, I didn't make. I was warned very strongly by these entities not to make a big deal. I did make a big deal about the burn on my back, and they thought I had burned it on the toaster or something. I remember them telling me that, and I'm like, how would I
Mm-hmm.
have done that? You know what I mean? Like maybe I
Mm-hmm.
had leaned up against it or something, but there was no way for me to have done that. Um, and other than that, when it would be, well, I was into gymnastics and tumbling and all that kind of stuff, not officially, but on the playground, because back then we were, the playground was our club, our gym, and so they just assumed I was hurting myself in those
Mm-hmm.
ways. There was always an excuse for it. There was just some level, I think, of cognitive dissonance there. And I was warned by these entities not to talk about it too, because I was saying, they did tests, they're bothering me, they're touching me, I had this breakdown. I was probably 6 years old, and I was sitting in the corner of a bathroom stall, just holding my knees and rocking, and they had to call my mom to come get me. And, I just kept babbling about them. Well, I couldn't say the aliens because I didn't know that's what they were, right?
Right.
She takes me to the doctor, and he looks at me and he's like, well, whatever's happened to her, she's going to be fine and she'll forget it,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of let it go. No, this was in the 60s and 70s. So, it was a different age then. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
as concerned about, people weren't as concerned about how we feel as people as they are
Mm-hmm.
today, which is nice.
When
Um,
you talk about tests, what types of tests? Being a little kid, what types of tests did they do on you guys?
they literally would check out like every part of my body. Like I remember him counting going down my spine and just touching every vertebrae, or scraping on my skin, taking blood,
Mm-hmm.
um, looking in my ears, putting needles into me. To this day, I've had over 8 major surgeries, hundreds of procedures. I'm fine with the big stuff, but when someone comes at me with a needle,
Mm-hmm.
I need Valium to this day. I mean, needle in my neck, needles in my chest, needles
Mm-hmm.
in my arms, everywhere. It was weird, and I don't know what they were doing with them,
Mm-hmm.
but that was really invasive, and just invasive examinations, physical
Mm-hmm.
examinations of
Mm-hmm.
my personal parts and stuff. So, it just, it was so confusing as a little child not to know what's going on, because when you go to a doctor or something, they tell you what they're doing, or
Right.
you have a parent or a caregiver or someone there to comfort you usually, and I didn't have that. So it was terrifying.
See, when I think of those tests, you say needles. And I know
Hmm.
it's probably fabrication, but the first thing I think of is that movie on Betty and Barney Hill when they gave her the pregnancy test with
Oh,
that foot long needle. Oh my God.
oh, I haven't watched that. I tell you, I've had a hard time until recently being able to watch anything. I've
Mm-hmm.
never even been able to stop the TV channel on something about UFOs and aliens. I've spent most of my life just being terrified, not being able to look out a window at night, not being able to walk outside alone at night. Um, just so many things that, until I did that PTSD therapy,
Mm-hmm.
it, terrified just all the time. I mean, I've spent my whole life just running at this high octane level of fear. just that they're going to come back. I mean, I don't have that anymore. I don't have to feel that way anymore. I know how to stop it now, stop them. But yeah, it was something like what you just described. Yeah, big needles, stuff like that.
Wow.
Not good. No, not fun.
How many times were you taken, or how many times would they take you? Actually.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly hundreds, because it was seemed like it was so often, and from as my earliest memories up until my 40s. So, you know, it was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so many pregnancies that just, I stopped going to the doctor until I'd hit like that 10 to 12 week mark, because
Mm-hmm.
it was too it was too hard. If I could just pretend I wasn't pregnant until I got past that kind of the first trimester,
Mm-hmm.
then it was easier to handle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's part of my voice. I'm sorry. I had
That's okay.
tests in the hospital yesterday, and it's affecting me more than I thought it would.
That's okay. Take your time. It's all good.
Mm.
When you talk about did the test change? Let me go this way. As a kid to being a teenager, as you got into your teen years, did the test change at all? Were they all similar tests from what you were getting as a kid?
Oh yeah, it did. It definitely changed. And as I got older, it was more, they were more interested in my reproductive ability than anything else. So they were really always checking on that and doing things there. And a lot of times I'd be put out, like, I'd wake up on that table, or I'd get to that table, and then I'd be put to sleep, put under, put out, kind of switched off, if you will. So thank goodness for a lot of that. I didn't have to go through some of that. But then there were a lot of times once I reached maturity that what happened was dark, and um, the things they were doing to me and the ways that they were utilizing me were dark. You know, I don't know if I can say the word on here or not, but
Okay.
I was being sexually abused
Yeah.
by
Okay.
them, and almost a it was it was almost ritual, the way it
Mm,
worked and the way it was happening. And then there were human people there, and mostly it was this underground facility, this big facilities, and there were human people there with them, working with them. And I don't think these people necessarily knew what they were getting into, because
mhm.
was party to events where they would utilize me to warn them, this you don't want this to happen to your family, to your daughters, to your wives, to your sons, to whoever. Um, and that's how they keep people quiet, because you don't want your family to be hurt. That's how they kept me quiet as a little child, because they showed me what's like a screen memory, which would be like putting on VR goggles almost, and showing me my family being murdered in front of me. And so, we can do this. If you talk, this is what's going to happen. Well, no little kid wants to be responsible for their family being hurt. It was,
Right.
so these things are just so traumatizing. Um, and like I said, without that therapy, I think, between that and my faith, I don't think I would, I haven't, it's been a long road, and
Hmm.
I haven't had the best relationships, and I haven't made the best choices, because something like this affects you in every possible way.
Let's talk a little bit about the pregnancies.
Yes.
And I read that you had a doctor that actually verified that you were pregnant.
Oh, I did. My pregnancies were yeah, I had at least 3 of them that were verified, and then then after that, I just didn't want to have them verified anymore, because like I said, it was my
Hmm.
way of pretending it wasn't happening. But yeah, they were verified pregnancies. I went to the doctor and back then you got a prescription for prenatal vitamins. I had my
Hmm.
prescriptions. I went to the doctor, I heard a heartbeat. They didn't do ultrasounds as often back then as they do
Hmm.
now. So that was something you did later on. But um, so everything had been confirmed. I was, in fact, pregnant. And then all of a sudden, I was not pregnant. And I'd go in and, one time they're like, well, maybe it's a tubal pregnancy, let's get in there and see if it's in, and it wasn't. And,
Mhm.
because I would be in so much pain too, and it just didn't make sense. Nothing
Mhm.
was adding up. But the babies were just gone. They were gone. And then I did ones when one of them was an infant. So these babies were taken, and I was taken onto a ship when one of them was an infant. And I was walked down this hallway,
Mhm.
and it's really darkly lit and kind of like red colors, almost like a dark room where you
Mhm.
develop pictures, that kind of.
Sure.
And the walls are just lined with these things that look like aquariums in a pet shop. And in these things is some sort of liquid, and in the liquid is our fetuses. And some of them look like human fetuses. It's hard to tell when they're that little what they are,
Right.
but at different stages of development, just rows and rows and rows of them down this hallway. And on either side of the end of the hallway, there were doors, and I went into the one door. They led me into there, and these were the different grays. There are grays that the kind that would come to pick me up, but
Mhm.
there are a different kind of gray that are in these facilities or on the ships, and they're taller, they're a little more sturdy,
Mhm.
they look almost older because their skin actually looks more wrinkled, their eyes move as opposed to the other ones that just have like the lenses for eyes. Anyway, one of these grays took me into this room and handed me a baby, and it was little. I mean, little, and told me to hold it, and I held the baby, and I just instinctively knew it was my baby. And I held it to me, and it wouldn't cuddle into me. It
Mhm.
didn't respond to me, to my touch, to my skin. I put it against my skin, and it was really dark in color, almost a reddish purple color. I didn't think it was alive for a minute, but it
Mhm.
was definitely alive. And it wouldn't respond to me. And I just kept saying, what's wrong? What's wrong with this baby? What's wrong with my baby? And its head was really big compared to its body. And its eyes were really big compared to a normal baby. And there was another woman in the room with her baby. And the room was really small, like the size of a large closet, maybe. And she was really into having her baby. And I was upset. I was visibly upset. And she was mad at me because I was upset. Um, and I just, but I wanted to keep it. And they came in to get me because I was upset. And they're like,
Mhm.
uh, you have a good baby. Your baby's fine. You're saying it's a good baby. I'm like, what does that mean? And I'm like, well, I want to keep it. They're like, no, you can't stay. And I was started to get hysterical. I wanted to stay with it. It was my baby.
Mhm.
But then I, got like switched off. That's the last I remember. And the next thing I know, I was back home, and that was really traumatic. And ever since then, I wanted this. If I had any surviving children, and they would be hybrids, I wanted,
Mhm.
I wanted them. I wanted to take care of them. I wanted to love them. I wanted to see them. I thought they have to be half me, so there's got to be some good in there, right?
Mhm.
Something I can take care of. I love my children. I have my own children. They are everything to me. They are my
Mhm.
whole world, and I adore them. They're adults now, but they're still my whole world. I
Mhm.
love them, and I wanted to love these children too. I really did.
S-
That was hard.
So later on, and I heard this also listening to you on the other guy's show.
Mhm.
You think that like three of your children came to see you?
They did, yeah. I had really struggled with this, and
Mhm.
I really think God allowed this to happen so that I could have my closure, because I woke up one night and I just startled awake, and there were three kids, for lack of a better word, standing by my bed and
Mhm.
along the side towards the bottom of the bed. And they were about maybe 4.5 foot tall, maybe 4 foot shorter, but they were shorter than my own kids. But at first I thought it was my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I think I only had one, maybe two of my kids living at home or visiting. They're in and out.
Right.
And I said one of their names. I'm like, "What's wrong?" And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, that's not so and so. And they're too short, and they look a little bit like my kids, but they weren't my kids.
Mm-hmm.
My kids all have a similar look to them. And I'm like, oh, oh my gosh, these are my kids, and I was startled, and I'm like, and my first thought was I wanted to jump up and grab them and hug them and love them, but I was paralyzed. I was all of a sudden, as soon as I thought about jumping up, I was just sleep paralysis on me as fast as I could think about it. And I'm like, before I kind of went into sleep paralysis, I smacked my husband. I'm like, hey, wake up, look. He wouldn't move. He wouldn't respond. And he's if I sneeze in bed, he's going to wake up, and he
Right.
wouldn't. And then all of a sudden I couldn't move, and they spoke with me telepathically is the best way I can say it. And wanted me to come with. They said, come with us. And I'm like, where do you want to go? And then I could just feel this evil coming off of them. Just instead of feeling like they wanted to love me the way I wanted to love them, I just felt contempt from them, just evil, just contempt, just radiating off of them. And I'm like, what's the matter? What's wrong with, and they're like, you have to come with us. I'm like, no, I don't think I want to go with you. And then they got very angry and very upset. I'm like, they're trying to levitate me off the bed. And I'm resisting with everything in me. And I'm like, no, the more I resisted, the more angry they got. They were just visibly angry. And then I called out to Jesus and I said, help me. I don't know what's going on here. Help me. As soon as I did that, they took off. They were gone. Wow. And in that couple of seconds, my husband shot straight up in bed. He's like, what's wrong? It was like he had just heard me, even though that happened like 5 minutes before or whatever it was. I don't even know how long it was. It was several minutes. But and then they were gone. And it was heartbreaking because I wanted to love them and I wanted them to love me, but they didn't have any love for me. They didn't have that. As humans, we tend to care about each other. We care about people we haven't met or we just met. Like I care about you and we just met, and there was none of that compassion. No, just nothing. It was empty. And it was shocking. It was really shocking. But I do feel like I kind of got that closure that I wanted. And I realize now that I couldn't have done anything for them, that they're not human and that they're not capable. They don't have the soul, the spirit that we have, that gives us that ability to love one another, and that kindness that we can have and that love towards one another. They just didn't have it.
Why do you think, I know you're not a doctor, I'm not a doctor, none of us are doctors here. Why do you think they have this breeding program going on?
I think they take them in the first trimester because I think our bodies are designed to reject anything that's not normal. So I know you didn't quite ask that when you said the doctor.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
When you think about that. Why do I think they have it going on? I think this goes back to ancient times. I think this is something that goes back to the Nephilim. I think you're familiar with that. You've had some guests talk about that.
Yes.
When you go back to Genesis 6, when it talks about the watchers that saw the daughters of men, and they fell and took wives of human women and mated with them. And the children that they had were the Nephilim, the giants, the mighty men of old. And they were the ones that were destroyed in the flood in the days of Noah. But I don't think that the program ended there. I know it didn't, because our Bible also tells us they were on the earth in those days and also after that.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe that this breeding program is going on because for a couple of reasons. One, when you look back to the biblical story and to the days of Noah, they were able to corrupt society completely by inbreeding with the population. It's the classic fight of good and evil. It's the classic seed war. So obviously this evil, the Nakash, Satan, is going to want to get back to that place
Mm-hmm.
because that's his happy place where there's, people were just doing evil all the time and there was no good in the world.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, we know when Satan fell, he took a third of the angels with him. So
Right.
one third of the angels are fallen, and that is what I believe these entities are.
Okay.
Because I've had a lot of contact with them, and they've
Mm-hmm.
pretty much confirmed that, with me. Except for the smaller grays, that's something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
But so they're outnumbered 2 to 1. The late Dr. Chuck Missler used to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that a lot, and I think that this is an opportunity to kind of build up an army, if you will, of
Mm-hmm.
more for their side. If you're trying to win a war, you need more soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think it's a classic case of good and evil.
I have heard this before from other guests.
Okay.
That theory about the fallen angels, and
Mm-hmm.
that these things could be fallen angels.
Yeah.
Well, as you got older, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously the tests would change. As you got
Mm-hmm.
older, were you treated any differently?
Oh yeah, I had what I call a handler with me.
Mm-hmm.
I had a man. He was with me from as long as I can remember, but that relationship changed drastically when I was older.
Mm-hmm.
He appeared as a man. He looked kind of military, just square jawed, square face, just handsome, buzz cut, haircut, always, very well built, and he was always with me. And he didn't have a name, but it was like he had an imprint on me and I had an imprint on him. So I always knew him. I can't explain it because we don't do that, but I think it's the same way sometimes animals will do that. They'll know,
Mm-hmm.
a cat will know her kittens from someone else's,
Sure.
that kind of thing. Because I've had a lot of people ask me, well, didn't he have a name? I'm like, he didn't need one. We just had this weird knowing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he was always with me, but that relationship turned physical when I got older.
Okay.
So in that way, yeah, I was definitely treated differently. But I trusted him
Mm-hmm.
because he was always with me. He was kind of my guide, my protector, giving me the message that, of who they were and what they were. You know, and I had a lot of Stockholm syndrome, I think,
Mm-hmm.
with him. And what's funny is as I've gotten to talk to more people and people who hadn't heard that part of my story yet, too, other women and men have had a similar experience, had this one particular entity that was always with them.
Mm-hmm.
They were taken. So I learned it's not an uncommon. I'm like, why did I have this entity with me?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's not uncommon. He was not he was not human. He appeared human. And um, when I was older and I felt a great deal of affection towards him, I, like I said, had bonded with him. He showed me his true form, and he was a reptilian, what you would call a reptilian. I haven't seen any pictures that look like him. I looked when I got brave. um, but they're similar, what's out there. Really flat against the head of ears. He had a flat, kind of triangle nose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, very greenish skin, but he was beautiful. I mean, he had like these iridescent almost scales on his skin that were just absolutely beautiful. I describe him in great detail in the book. The last time I saw him, though, he didn't look the same. He didn't have that beautiful iridescent look about him.
Mm-hmm.
It was only a couple of months ago, maybe, I had an interaction with him, and they were trying to get me to come back. And I was basically offered everything I wanted in exchange for dropping what I'm doing right now, right here. There have been a lot of attempts to get me to stop this, to not share the information I'm sharing, attempts, all kinds of things. This one in particular, he was just this close to my face and just, taunting me and telling, when I wouldn't agree, at first trying to coerce me, I can get rid of your pain. I can do this. I can do that, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. When I wouldn't agree to it, got ugly, got angry. But again, he couldn't touch me. He couldn't hurt me anymore. And that was, I think, what made him the most angry of all, is that he no longer had any control over me. That had been broken. But he looked different. He looked just kind of this sickly green color, like almost like he was dying. I don't know. So that's really kind of bugged me. I just wonder what's going on there. If he's dying or something like that, I don't know. But that's who was with me. And so as I got older, yeah, that relationship definitely changed.
When you say that he looked human,
Mm-hmm.
was he a appearance shifter? Or I've heard reports from people who have been abducted that are contactees who have said that it's like a hologram mask thing that they put in front of them.
That's what it looked like when he changed his form in front of me. It almost looked like whatever he was dissolved, and then I saw what he really looked like. So I don't know if that was a hologram or if he was what you might call a shapeshifter. They're dealing with science and technology and physics and information and technology and everything that is so far advanced of us. We just can't even imagine. And it's funny because a lot of things that I used to experience way back in the day in the 60s and 70s are possible now. Things like what we can do with virtual reality, and what we can do with holograms and what we can do with rooms that are nothing but all video screens. I was in rooms like that when I was little, being shown, things of the earth and things of this, because they wanted me to parrot their message of, we're your benevolent space brothers. Those aren't the words they used, but that we're here to save the earth and all that, that we're your fathers, we're your seeders, we're all one religion, and the love all, and be as one, which that's all great, and that all sounds really good, and I believe that we all need to love one another and be kind to one another and accept one another, and I don't have any problem with that. What I have a problem with is abducting children and raping women and taking semen and from the men and eggs from women. These are the things I have a problem with. And I always say, if you're so benevolent, why can't you find a way to communicate better? They are so advanced. They have so much more capability than us. There should be a way to communicate that in a kind and loving way. If you're so kind and loving, could you please be kind and loving to me? Because I see kind and loving as something very different than what they were showing me. Like, I would never do that to you or anyone else. It was terrible.
Did you worry about your kids being abducted as well?
Very much. Very much. Only one of them that I know was affected, but that's no longer a problem. And going to be a problem for any of us anymore, because I've learned how to break that and to break generational curses, to break any bonds and anything they have over us. My friend Vicki Joy Anderson, who wrote an amazing book called They Only Come Out at Night, she was an amazing help to me. There are a lot of really, really good people out there who know what to do and how to help. And so I was able to make sure that my family is safe, that I'm safe, that we don't have to worry about that anymore. And that's another reason I want to talk about it, because if people don't talk about it, they won't find a way to stop it. They'll just think, like I did, that this is just something I have to put up with my whole life, because they're bigger and smarter and stronger and far more advanced than we are.
As far as them coming back all the time to get you, do you think that they had put some kind of monitor on you so they could find you?
Probably, yeah. A couple of years ago, I can't remember how many years now, maybe 7 years ago, I can't remember. I took something out of my own elbow and I did it over the sink, And I mean, I got the tweezers and yanked that sucker out, but it went like it was on its own, like it had a motor in it, and went down the sink. I couldn't get it. I mean, because it landed in the sink, but I have these really flat bowl sinks, which I don't like. Anyway, so it landed there, and it was little. It was like about like a smaller than a grain of rice, about half the size of a grain of rice. Pulled it out because I knew it was in my elbow. You can still feel a hole there. If you were here, you could feel it. And it went like it was a robot or something. Like it had its own engine in it. It just went straight down the sink. I couldn't get it. And now I've got something in my neck that's trying to come out. And it's really bugging me. So I've got to see if there's something in here. But I do think they tracked me. I really do. It's hard to tell I have a lot of MRIs and x-rays and scans and stuff, but I have so much, my body has sustained so much damage that they can't explain. I have rods and wires and screws and plates and everything you can imagine holding me together because my bones are doing crazy things that the doctors can't understand. I had a brain tumor earlier this year, that they're like, how is this happening? My doctors were baffled. And I got prayed over and it's gone. I have 2 MRIs in a row, one where it's there and one where it's not, which is awesome. But I was saying that because there's no way almost to tell if there's anything else in me because there's so much interference from all the metal in my body now that you can't pick out little things like that. But I've looked at my x-rays and stuff. I haven't seen anything else.
The other thing I was thinking of when you were talking, especially about the babies, and the aquarium things and all this, like you say, their technology is so much better than ours. And then to come up to this time when you're talking about, your ailments that the doctors are saying and everything, maybe they're doing genetic testing and doing stuff to your genes, because, I mean, that sure as heck is going to make you, some people are more prone to arthritis than others and blah, 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 and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I've got things that no one else in my family has. So, yeah, that would make sense. I mean, I've got some disorders but I don't test positive for the genetic disorder that would go necessarily with it. But I got crazy bone growth on certain parts of my body, but my age is younger. My physical age is younger than my chronological age. I'm aging more slowly. There's all these weird things, and I put a lot of that in the book just to show that, there's so many things that are hard to explain, but make sense when you think about what they're doing and how they're doing it. It's been such a strange process, but it gives me some answers at least to why some of these things are happening that are just hard to explain.
So are they still coming for you, or has that settled down? And do you think you know why if it has settled down?
Yeah, they've tried. They can't come in. They can't cross the threshold anymore. I've broken the threshold covenants. They can't come across the threshold. But they can be outside the windows, and they've done that a few times to see if they can, freak me out. And they don't anymore. It does still freak me out. Okay, but I rebuke them immediately. You call on Jesus, they go. There's a hierarchy. There's a pecking order, and you can see it in the different ones that I've experienced, the different types of entities that I've seen. But there's one at the top, and that's Jesus. He's the boss man, and he has all the authority, and they can't cross the threshold. They can't get me. They can't come near me. It's crazy. I mean, I've gone from being tortured to them this close to my face, and they can't touch me. It's wild. And I want people to know that you don't have to be, I'm not, people, you don't have to go and be crazy religious. Okay. You just have to be a believer. There's a difference. There's a big difference. This is really about love, compassion, forgiveness, and understanding. And those are really important things. And about understanding that you're Savior and your salvation, and that you don't have to put up with this kind of stuff.
I'm thinking, and I've said this before during these types of interviews, when I read the Mojave incident, which was really scary. I mean, that was probably yours is more scary than theirs. I'll tell you. I thought theirs was scary. And when they described what was going on after they were abducted, when they kept coming back to them, being a ghost hunter and doing what I do, and hearing people's descriptions of these ghosts,
Mm-hmm.
it matched up to how they were getting in the, how they were coming through the walls and how the
Oh,
temperature would go down and things like that. And I
yeah.
started to wonder, what am I investigating? Am I investigating, a human spirit, or am I investigating these aliens that are coming?
Right. And well, I think, and yeah, you're dealing with different things when you're dealing with these entities, because
Yeah.
I believe the grays that most people see, the shorter grays, the ones that show up in homes and
Mm-hmm.
in fields and stuff like that, the ones that are generally on the ships, I believe that these are basically a biological suit that they have created to be
Mm-hmm.
able to come here into our atmosphere, into our
Mm-hmm.
homes, into our plane of existence, because we're dealing with stuff we just don't understand. They're so far,
Mm-hmm.
they're in different planes, different places. But these grays are like a biological suit. I mean, it's something we can do today, grow skin in a lab. Yeah.
Right.
And they smell bad. They smell like a cross between a dead animal and sulfur. Some of them smell worse than others that I've been. Some don't seem to have any scent at all. Um, I believe they're inhabited by demonic entities.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe demons to be, from our biblical texts and references,
Sure.
the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim.
Sure.
And the Nephilim were the hybrids.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that makes sense, because think about it. If they get captured, if a ship gets shot down or a ship crashes, what are they going to recover?
Mm-hmm.
An empty
Mm-hmm.
skin suit, basically, right?
Right.
I mean, they could be run with AI, they could be run with demons, they could have an alien inside that skin suit. There's
Right.
so many choices and things that they can work with there. So, in that respect, yeah, you're dealing with a demon that's
Mm-hmm.
not human, that has much more powerful than humans,
Mm-hmm.
which has got to be scary for you when you get in that situation. And then when you're dealing with the other types of alien entities, you're dealing with fallen angelic beings way off our pay scale. That's
Right.
crazy.
Right. 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 Right.
And they're scary and they're powerful and they know it, but they also know that they've got a boss too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we have protection.
Mm-hmm. And like you say, they're not coming now because you went ahead and took care of it. I've also heard stories from people that got to a certain age
Mm.
and they no longer get abducted because for some reason, we're old. Who the
Yeah,
heck wants someone old to breed with or whatever they're doing?
right. I think they still wanted me around because I'm able to articulate my message and I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to articulate this message.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want that. They want me to articulate another message. And there are
Mm-hmm.
other people who are articulating a different message. And I happen to not, be doing that. So they're not happy with what I'm doing. That's been made very clear to me. But I'm not going to stop doing it because that's the truth. And it's the only way I keep myself, my family, my friends, my loved ones, the people I meet, the people who are listening. It's the only
Mm-hmm.
way I can keep people safe. I would never go back on that. I would never go back on that. And this is the truth.
Mm-hmm. Now your book has the sinister overlay to it. Tell us, we've heard all this, and obviously, a lot of this stuff is sinister. I mean, there's no going back on that. But in your opinion, what do you think is so sinister about what they're doing, or what do you think they're trying to accomplish with all this?
Yeah. Well, I really think they're trying to create this sense of we are your benevolent space brothers. And I
Mm-hmm.
think they're trying to create a sense of, and we're your cedars, we're your God, we're your
Mm-hmm.
gods, we're, you know, from distant planets, and we came to be here with you and see you. I don't believe they're from other planets. There's no indication of that. They
Mm-hmm.
never gave me any indication of that. I was with them my whole life, never went to another planet, never went to another solar system, never went to another galaxy far, far away. No, it was always underground. Um, I don't know if I was ever underwater, because by the time you're in the facility, it could be
Right.
underground or underwater
Right.
or just hovering above Earth, but nowhere, never went to the moon. Nothing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe that they're from another planet, and I don't believe clearly they're not benevolent. Clearly the things they're doing, you can't sit with kidnapping little kids or raping people
Right.
as kind. It just doesn't work. I mean,
Right.
and the message that they want to send, that they created us, well, then where did they come from? Who's their
Right.
creator? And when you ask them that, that becomes a problem, and I'm like, well, if you create us, who created you? Because I knew that wasn't the case. So it becomes I believe that is the ultimate goal, is to be able to create a delusion that is so strong that people want to believe that. And I understand that. I mean, you want them to just be these amazing, creatures that come down and rescue us, but there are good, benevolent, amazing angelic beings out there. And I've experienced that as well. And so, we have to remember, it's not all evil, it's not all bad. There are good beings out there, but my experiences with them were very good and very positive. I mean, they showed up because I asked for help. God sent them. They helped me. Period. There was no intrusion in any way, shape, or form. So there are good beings out there, amazing good beings. But it's hard to know the difference.
Right. And I think it's like anything else. Whether these things are demons or whatever they are, they're all in their own society. It's just like our society. You got good eggs and you got bad eggs out there.
Exactly.
And you're going to run into them no matter what. The more contact you have, the more you're going to see the difference in the good eggs and bad eggs. What do you hope happens? I mean, you have this book out, and you're putting the word out. What do you hope happens by you getting the word out?
A couple of things. I hope that it helps kind of lessen the stigma of talking about it. By coming forward and sharing my story, this is a really hard thing to share, and it's a really hard thing to do. And I opened myself up to a lot of criticism, but amazingly, I've received an amazing amount of just lovely, beautiful support from people like you. I want it to be okay for people to talk about this. I want people to acknowledge and accept that this is happening. This isn't crazy, people. This is the truth. This is happening to so many people. It's just that everyone's afraid to talk about it because the government created this stigma that anyone who talks about it is crazy. Well, this was something that was put in place for us so that we wouldn't talk about it because they've been involved with them from the get-go. So I want to try to break through some of that ugly stigma that's there. And I want to let people know, if you're in a situation like this and you don't want it to be happening, there are options. It doesn't have to happen. You can stop it. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of great resources, a lot of great books, a lot of a lot of resources, and a lot of help, because it's unfortunate, and to protect your children too. I mean, I wish I had known when my children were small, because I could have done a better job of protecting them. So I think it's just really important, especially for anyone who knows somebody. I mean, if you have a friend that comes up to you and says, "Hey, I had this weird thing happen and I'm not sure if I can talk about it," just listen with an open mind and an open heart. You don't have to believe someone, but if you can listen, sometimes that's all someone's going to need to be able to get through the pain and the trauma, because this is one of the most traumatic things that can happen to somebody. And I think it's important that people have avenues to get help. You can't go to your doctor or your therapist and say this happened. They'll think you're crazy. They'll put you away. And I mean, I didn't know how to get help, until I kind of accidentally got help. So that's a long answer. Sorry.
It's okay.
It's a couple of things. And I really just want to share the truth of what I know about it. I think there's a lot of different information out there. I applaud anyone who's trying to share information. I'm not here to judge anyone or judge anyone's choices on how they want to approach this. This is the direction I'm going with it, and I hope that it can help some people.
Absolutely. And you answered my question about the government, because that was next. But, I look at it this way. People can say what they want about the government and knowing about this. But like you say, their technology is so much farther along than ours. In a way, the government would be stupid to fight them or try to fight them and not try to work with them, because how are you going to win? You can't win.
No, they can't. And there's only one way to win, and that's to understand that the creator is in control, not these guys. But that's not how the government works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they've been working with them for a long time. And I really don't think we'll ever get a full disclosure, because a full disclosure would mean they'd have to really tell the truth, right?
Right.
And what's the truth? They've been working with them all along, and they're
Yep.
the ones who gave permission. Someone has to give permission for them to come into our lives,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And sometimes it's generational curses. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's what someone's been involved in, and that permission's been given by someone in your family. But it can also be your government. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if people realize that, that could really cause some problems. And that's not something they want people to think about.
Right.
And they're never going to want to admit that. And then they'd have to admit, they say it's because they think people will freak out or be scared. I think we can handle a lot more than they would ever give us credit for,
Right. Right.
and
Absolutely.
we see through their lies anyway. So,
Absolutely. The other thing I was thinking real quick before we sign off, because this hour went by. Oh my God, you're so fascinating. I read your book. It's a great book.
Oh, thank
And
you.
it's a fascinating book. I love it. And it scared me. It's like I told you, the thing in the Mojave scared me. Your book had me up all night, literally.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No. That's good. When a book can bother me like that, then I really listen to what's being said in this book, because, yeah, I mean, this is going on all the time. You've been talking about the underground base, and there's so many stories. And I don't know if I wrote this to you when I asked you to be on the show about Mount Shasta. I kind of lived part time up in that area off and on for like 5 or 6 years, and there's so many, like this little town Weed. There's so many mystic shops in there with stories about the top of the mountain opening up and these spacecraft coming out of there. So I don't think that's as far fetched as people might think it is, because Mount Shasta has always been rumored to have a base underneath.
Yeah, not at all far fetched. No, I mean, this is right under our noses. I don't think they're out there living on some distant galaxy. I think they are right underneath our feet. And if people realize that, I think that would keep a lot more people up at night too. But yeah, I think they're right here. I could talk about the underground stuff that I saw for hours, because there's just so much to it. And I really think that's where they are most of the time.
Absolutely. Karin, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to get you back on to talk more about this. This is fascinating. I'd like to go into more detail about the underground stuff. That'd be great. But I want to thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening. What's next for you?
Oh, Charlotte, thank you so much, by the way. I have enjoyed this thoroughly, and I'd love to come back. You're just such a doll. What's next is to continue just trying to get the word out about this book. It just came out in the beginning of October, so we're really just getting started. So going, doing some speaking engagements, going to some conferences, just keep talking to people and answering a lot of emails through my website. People can reach me that way, and I will get back to everyone. I promise. It just sometimes takes a while, because I have a lot of them to get through, but that's what's next, is wherever God sends me.
Fantastic.
So, just try to keep going and try not to lose my voice.
Absolutely. Well, once again, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening, and we'll be in touch. We'll be in touch for maybe sometime after the new year and have you back on. How's that sound?
Absolutely. I'd love that. That sounds perfect.
Okay. All right, fair enough. All right, you have a great one.
You too. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, I told you guys it was going to be a fascinating show, and it was. Tomorrow night, we're having, I guess, a part 2 with Nancy. Nancy Matz is going to be back with us tomorrow, and she's going to be talking about, how to see depression in other people. But we're also going to do free readings again tomorrow night. So if you have a question that you didn't get to ask the last time with Nancy, feel free to write it down, and come on in tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. And yeah. Anyway, if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. And naturally, and always, we are looking for people to follow us no matter what. So, and like I said, I usually tell you guys, and I'm going to say it again, where I appreciate each and every one of you that does follow us, and the people that have been with us since the beginning 4 years ago, going into this format, and the people that have been with me since Blog Talk Radio days. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys. I may not say it all the time, but I do. All right, that being said, I'm going to let you guys go. I will get you her contact information here, and where you get the book and all that good stuff, and then I'm going to let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening. So here we go. Okay. Oh my God, I put Wilkinson up there. That is the website. I was in a hurry earlier. So it's Karin Wilkinson author.com, and it's all lowercase. And of course, there is the book, Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. And of course, that's available either at Amazon or probably you get it from the website as well. Okay, guys, I will see you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Have a great evening.